Hey, cool gray. Well, here's another experiment. What else is new? Today I'm going to try something I've never tried before. I have 4 small canvases. They're 8 by 10. I have done just a brief pour over them and then created another kind of texture over that for a background. And I'm going to try to do a mandala over the middle, which actually would cover the 4 corners. I'll show you in a minute, in order to make this either something that can be hung as a grouping or something that can be hung as 4 individual art pieces. I will also show you the inspiration, the first mandala that I tried over a pour. That gave me the idea to try to do this. I don't know how it's going to turn out or how symmetrical it's going to be, but I would love to take you along for the journey. So let me show you how we're going to get started, and then we'll go along together for the ride. So here are my canvases. There are 4 small 8 by 10. I poured first, so you may be able to see, well, you can certainly see the pour in the background here. Very, very pale with this gray beigey color, and then with a white that I swiped over it. And then I came on top with those same colors and a little, here I'll show you, a little texture tool that I dipped in the paint and then dabbed over top of that to create a little bit more texture over my pour. So that really is going to serve as my blank canvas. And then I've taped those pieces down so they'll be sort of secure. They do still move a little bit. And I chose to do a finger's width of space in between here to try to keep them as even as possible. I've drawn some guidelines to put my mandala, which I'm going to be doing with dotting tools, and we'll take you along for that whole journey. And I'm working off of this design as an inspiration piece. I'm not going to replicate this directly, but I am going to use that as my inspiration. So let's get started. So I want to talk to you a little bit about where I am at this point and what the challenges are that I'm facing, because I know you can see the same thing that I can see. And because I'm experimenting, I'm learning as I go. What I'm noticing is that symmetry is getting to be a challenge for a couple of reasons. One is that I can't turn my canvas or my paper as I go, so I have to kind of turn my body to get the angles that I want. And also because instead of going on these perpendicular angles, I made these other angles. It's very challenging to get actual symmetry because that's not symmetrical. So I am at this very point, before we get too much further, because you know the further out we go, the more any asymmetry is going to be exaggerated more and more, is I'm trying to use these large dots here to get me sort of back to where I want to be. Where that's challenging is right here and right here, where you'll see over here I'm much closer to the edge of the canvas. Here I'm sort of in the middle, and in these places I'm even further away. But I do feel like I can get pretty close to maintaining a symmetry and bringing this into balance as I go. You'll see that I'm not exactly on my guidelines in a couple of places, especially here for that reason, because I'm trying to keep things sort of on kilter. So that's what I'm experiencing. Also, I made a big boo-boo right in here. You saw me make it to begin with, and off camera, I used a nice stiff flat craft brush, dipped in some water to wet that down, and then I used just a piece of paper towel that I folded up into a nice stiff point to sort of pull all of that out of there. And if you do that quickly, also I use Q-tips sometimes as well in order to correct just a single dot, but this was a whole line of them that I had to correct. Once again, I want to encourage you that if everything is not exactly perfect, the overall effect can still be wonderful. Will that be the case with this one? I'm not sure yet. These black dots didn't turn out quite the way I wanted them to, but I think that I can bring that back into balance momentarily, and that's what I'm going to try next. Okay, just want to check in again and let you know what I'm thinking. I mixed some of my colors too thin, this pale yellow and it looks like my white. See how that's blending together there? There's not a lot I can do about that right now, so I'm going to embrace it because that is what I do. I also see that my white doesn't show up very much here, so I'm refraining from using it a whole lot until I get out here where my background's a little darker. What I'm happy with is that I do seem to have reclaimed some of the symmetry. I'm just paying a little more attention, and now that my two different motifs, this one and this one, have defined themselves a little bit more, it's easier for me to keep track of where I am. So I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, I'm going to make a couple of palette adjustments here because I am seeing that I can't really tell the difference between my reds. So I'm going to make this red just a little bit deeper, perhaps a lot deeper. Let's find out what happens there. Didn't really expect that much paint to come out. Might have to put some of that in another well, but let's see if I can save it. So that's super deep. It's actually a lot deeper than I was anticipating, but you know what? That's okay. I think I'd like to introduce that into my palette. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and give it a try. We'll do this step real time. When you put them right next to each other, you can see the difference. That's much deeper than I was going for, but these subtle changes in shade actually do help add a dimensional look to your mandalas. And this whole piece is an experiment anyway. So one of the things that I am noticing as my mandala develops is that by adding these extra sections, I'm essentially duplicating this motif, and so it's not completely symmetrical all the way across, but I believe that it's working as an overall design. And I am pleased with the way things are developing for the most part. I've had a couple of mishaps along the way, but I'm really starting to feel very much like, for me, art is not as much about the finished product as it is the journey on how I got there. And when I say that, I don't mean that I shouldn't be striving for a satisfactory finished piece. I'm just saying that what I'm connecting with emotionally when I'm finished with a piece, just as much as does it look the way that I intended for it to look, is do I see evidence of the journey? Like right there. I'm not going to try to correct that because that's the journey so far. Now I know that's not everyone's aesthetic, but that's what's happening to me, and a big part of why I started this channel was to share the journey with you and to take you along authentically for the ride wherever it's leading me. So I may not feel that way next week, but it's the way I feel today. So little things like these dots coming together and these dots coming together and these being a little off kilter, I'm actually kind of loving that. Another thing I noticed as I was painting is these splatters right here from the red paint. As I carried the tool over, I had some dripping, which is an indication that that color was too thin. And what I'm going to do there, because I didn't notice it until it was too dry to really clean up, since my background is kind of scumbled anyway, I'm probably going to do some spattering over this in those colors to embrace that and add to the aesthetic. So that's what I'm all about. All right, I'm going to thicken up a couple more of these shades here and keep on going. Thanks for watching part 1 of this mandala quad. Please join me for part 2 in real time as we complete the design and finish the piece.